Yes. Hi everyone. Good evening. Today we have a very good panel for discussing EVs. So we have Abhijit Sinha, who is the National Director for Ease of Doing Business, as well as he's doing additional charge of National E-Highways. Welcome, Abhijit.
Hi, Saurabh. Am I audible? Welcome. Good evening, everyone.
Yes. And Rhythm, can you just show the promotional banner once, which is the introductory banner? Hello, Rhythm.
Yeah, we are doing that.
Yes, yes.
No, sir.
Yes. So welcome everyone. So today's topic is electric vehicle changing automobile landscape. We all know EVs are coming. We are all fans of Elon Musk, who has been a leader who has transformed the automobile industry. And as I have already introduced you to Abhijit, introducing to the second speaker for the day, Satvik Shetty. So Satvik is based in Bangalore and he's the ex-co-founder of Vidyut EV Power. And Satvik, as an entrepreneur, you bring a different perspective. So today we have one entrepreneur and one person representing the government. I think these two ecosystems are very different, the government ecosystem and the entrepreneurial ecosystem. But the good thing in the current scenario is that government wants people to use EV, the entrepreneurs want people to use EVs, and I feel that in next 5 to 7 years, EVs will be the main transportation medium. So with that, my first question to Abhijit. Abhijit, we all see Mr. Gadkari, and he's always talking about making national highways filled with electric vehicles, and government, I think, has a program to basically give a push to EVs. So can you tell a little bit about the national e-highway program as well as the general push by government towards the EV space?
National highways are very, very important from the perspective of reducing carbon emission as a whole in a country. And if you look at the 6 targets, if you look at our goals for reducing carbon emission, we have very limited scope of doing that, because that part of work, that segment is very distractive in terms of economic growth. You cannot go ask industries to reduce their carbon emission until and unless there are significant number of counterparts available. Counterparts, when I'm referring here, could be a nuclear energy, wind power, or solar power, or hydro power. So if you look at the transition which India has aimed, then the lowest hanging fruit is to reduce carbon emission from the transportation, from mobility. And when you go mobility, majority of fossil fuel consumption happens on the highways. It is not inside the city, because in cities, your maximum run is around 10, 20, 50 kilometers in metros. Smaller cities, it is more less than that. On highways, the stretch and the volume which we spend for transportation and goods, it is far more than what we spend in the city. And how do we convert these highways into electric highways are global concern now. Many of the countries are developing their own ecosystem. Sweden developed its own electric corridor, then Germany, then Australia, UK, US. So all of them, they are willing to reduce the emission and the cost of freight and passenger movement on their highways and in European side we call it freeways. These trams are not same. If you look at Sweden, you will see a pantograph line. If you look at Germany, you'll again see a pantograph overhead lines and a special kind of vehicle with a clamp that can touch their power lines. But if you look at Australia, or if you look at UK, or if you look at India, so they are yet to reduce or get involved into transition. They are first going with a different type of ecosystem, which compares petrol pump. So in India, e-highway,
Your
it
sound
necessarily
is
means having type of charging
Abhijit, I think you have some
across the
network
world.
issue. Can you close your video? The sound is not coming properly. If you can close the video, some network issues there.
Am I audible now?
Now it is better.
So if you will look at the kind of ecosystem people has picked up, am I audible? Is it going okay?
Yes, yes. Now we can hear you.
So if you look at the ecosystem, it is not same as what Sweden has done or Germany has done. So in India, having a electric corridor may be a little distant dream. At ministerial level, the discussions and negotiations are very, very, in a final stage. And very soon we will hear about formal announcements. But before that, before electric corridor, there is an age of electric highway going to happen in India, and these electric highways would be very simple charging stations who look like or who are like petrol pumps available on these highways. So this is where we are moving. I am fortunate to be heading such ambitious project, and anything which you guys wish to know about it, I'll be more than happy to share.
So basically, you are saying is that instead of the overhead lines, the broad approach, which obviously I think from a practical point of view, government is taking is towards the having the charging infrastructure and having people use batteries basically for the electric vehicles. So coming over to Satvik, I think Satvik, you had a startup which was into electric charging infrastructure. So can you tell a little bit about the state of the electric charging infrastructure in the country right now, and specifically because you're from Bangalore, if you can tell about like what is the infrastructure in metros right now?
Right. Absolutely, Saurabh. Firstly, thank you, Saurabh, and thank you, All India Management Association, for holding this event. I think this is the right time to talk about EVs. Everybody is talking about EVs. All the stakeholders are talking about EVs. Policymakers, industry bodies, startups, young startups like us. So all of us are talking about EVs, and we want to ride the EV revolution, isn't it? In fact, our Honorable Prime Minister, Shri Narendra Modi ji, has committed to net zero emissions by 2070 in the recent COP conference. And one of the ways we can achieve this is obviously by having sustainable transport and green transport, right? Now, see, there are multiple reasons why EVs are not taking off, okay? And one of the reasons, is EV charging infrastructure. So my previous company, which I co-founded, we were in the business of installing EV charging stations, right? Now the status, see, so how it works, EV charging stations is there are government bodies that actually go and lay out the charging stations. Then there are private players like us, young small startups, who also lay out charging stations, correct? So there are different types of chargers, like level 1 charging, level 2 charging, and level 3 is the fast charging, which requires huge capex. And ideally, someone from the government is somebody who can normally invest, okay? Now, coming to the charging infrastructure layout, I would say Bangalore as a city as such has multiple charge points, okay? Mostly the discoms, the places where we have BESCOMs, right? So they have a lot of charging infrastructure there. But then the moment you go into the highways, at least Bangalore to Goa, Bangalore to Hyderabad, the major cities that connect to Bangalore, there are some charging stations available. But the moment you enter into the hinterland, let's say Bangalore to a tier 1 city like, let's say like Mangalore, Bangalore to Dharwad, Bangalore to Hubli, that's when the problem comes, right? There's not much charging infrastructure in place when you focus on Bangalore to the hinterlands, correct? Now, there are many incentives given from the central government all the way to the state government to install charging stations. Um, I think time will tell, because running an EV charging station is not a joke. It is capital intensive, right? And we just can't open it and leave it empty. We want the vehicles to pick up, the volumes of vehicles to pick up, and then start utilizing charging stations, right? So I think we're in the right direction, but we need some more push from the local government and bodies as well. Yeah.
Okay, so I have one question which I have from both of you. So the question is that we all know that there are lots of petrol pumps everywhere around cities, villages, everywhere you go in India, you find petrol pumps. So the future of EV charging will be based on the EV charging pumps, something similar to petrol pumps in terms of the user experience, or the user experience of the EV charging station will be different, as well as will EV charging happen in houses also? Like like I have a dream. I don't know how many people have the same dream. The dream is that we always used to feel that Arab sheikhs have free oil and they can go for as much as they want. And now I think anyone can become like a Arab sheikh. You can have solar cells in your house and you can have a electric vehicle, and now you can run as many kilometers as possible for free. So is that a future, or like I'm daydreaming and like the future maybe it's something different and we may be paying for the EV charging for all times?
Right. Right. Maybe let me take the first part of the question in terms of the user experience at a petrol bunk versus a charging station. In my company, right, I get a lot of inquiries from landowners. They call me and tell me, "Hey, Satvik, look, I have a land. I would like to convert this into an EV charging station." Now I'm like, look, petrol bunk and EV charging stations are complete two different models. They are not the same. They're two different models. And I'll explain to you why they're two different models, okay? Now, petrol bunk, see, oil and gas, right, have been controlled by big companies, ONGC companies. So we as the end consumer, if you want to refuel your vehicle, you have to go to the petrol bunk. There's no other way. Whereas electricity is democratized, right? You have electricity available at home, at offices, at hotels. So you are not bound to go to the EV charging station to charge your vehicle. You might as well stay back at your home and charge overnight, right? That's number one point. Number two, the user behavior at a petrol bunk is very different from user behavior at a charging station. In 2 to 5 minutes, you have refueled your tank and you're off from the petrol bunk. But in the EV charging station, with the existing technology, right, you have to, even if you have a fast charging station there, you have to spend minimum 30 to 45 minutes for a 0 to 80% charge in your four-wheeler. So which means it demotivates me as a user or a driver of a vehicle to go and spend 40 minutes in an EV charging station. So I would think twice. So I'm not dependent on a charging station. I would rather, I have a meeting in my office for 2 hours. I just go to my office and plug my vehicle for 2 hours and probably have a 30%, plus charge. Correct. So the EV the end consumer user behavior is very different from both the models. And finally, it comes to economics now. Now, see, it is very different. The economics of a petrol bunk is very different from the economics of a charging station. A typical mid-sized petrol bunk in a good location, I think they would sell anywhere from 1 lakh liters per month. So if you assume, let's say 2.5 to 3 rupees margin per liter, a petrol bunk owner would make maybe 3 lakhs or 2.5 to 3 lakhs per month. Forget about the revenues in EV charging station. You can never imagine to make such huge amount in the present situation in an EV charging station, correct? So the economics are very different. And coming to using solar cells and solar energy to power your EV charging station, it is possible. Again, you're adding a layer of cost to it, correct? Solar panels, again, it comes at a cost, right? So it comes with a cost in it. Probably I would let Abhijit to talk about how we can use renewable sources.
Yes, Abhijit, can you share the like how government is doing national highways? Like I have talked to you on a personal level also, and I know you are involved in the Agra highway as well as Jaipur highway electrification. So can you tell a little bit about those the electric charging infrastructure in those highways as well as in general what is happening around the country?
Saurabh, am I audible to you? Is it
Yes,
going off?
you are audible.
So I'm very extremely regretful and unfortunate that I will have to go in next 5-10 minutes from the conference. So there is some very unfortunate incident which happened yesterday in Hyderabad. 8 people who died because of fire in EV showroom.
Oh, yes,
And there would be an investigation. Obviously, what was the reason of those fires? And I'm somebody who given a recommendation of black box to be enabled with each battery. So I might be going to ministry. Someone else was supposed to represent my organization, but he could not reach. So very quickly, if I can add some value to the discussion and then
yes, you
take it
can tell
forward.
about the current charging infrastructure on the highways, as well as I think you have brought a very good point. The EV safety, I think, is a big concern these days. So maybe after that, you can tell about the EV safety issues.
So if we look at charging infrastructure on highways, we need to look at it from where I left in the last session. Is can we look at petrol pumps and charging stations together, and does they look same? Not from the look perspective, but from the perspective of investment, from the perspective of understanding of software and standards, safety recommendations, layout, design. And the way we look at a petrol pump from the perspective of investors, and the way we look at petrol pump from the perspective of earning. So I don't know how much these charging stations earn, but I know how much it is, how the petrol pump is aligned together for the earning. So these three things, design and layout of the charging station, who is going to invest in the charging station with you, and how much you are going to earn out of it. These three questions goes unanswered, and the ecosystem becomes unviable for the entire industry. We already have two departments, which is health and education, where we only have to spend, hardly we see any income, hardly we see any demographic dividend out of it. And when it comes to an indexing, most of the time we end up criticizing our own ecosystem that we could not develop a good infrastructure into healthcare and a good infrastructure into education. So are we going to open one more department of philanthropy where we are going to put up a lot of charger, a lot of money is going to get invested, but when you need a charge, it is not working. When you need to reach to a charger, you cannot match it with your vehicle. So these kind of infrastructure tomorrow will become institutions which are asset heavy, who are NPAs, because national average of utilization of a charger which is being bought on the pocket of government is usually 4% to 5%. And an asset which is being utilized to 4% to 5%, it reaches to its break even into 45 years. Who will invest into this business, which is reaching to break even to 45 years? Obviously, government. So for each thing, if you will go back to government and you expect them to develop an infrastructure of equivalent to a petrol pump network, and then people will be interested to buy vehicle, then this chicken and egg story is not yet over. It is going to kill more money. It is going to kill more people into safety recommendations. Then where the ecosystem need to be looked at it, where government intent is very clear. This government is a government of reform, perform, and transform. The first reform which government cleared very blunt and bold is you do need a license for setting up a petrol pump, but you do not need a license for setting up a charger. It's not a small thing. It's a very big thing. You can go and set up if you have layout, if you have a financer, and if you know how much you're going to earn. But you still require a model to be doing. So National Highway EV is a place where you are going to work, you are going to spend most of the time in clarifying and making it a business which is a business of people, which is a business of India, where government need not to come at every step and every position to spend and finance everything. And it will only be possible if we clear, layouts, designs of the station. So we cleared. We made two of the stations, which are India's largest station in Gurugram. We made one of the highway where people who are traveling between Delhi, Jaipur, and Delhi, Agra, they can travel into buses, electric buses, and electric cars. The fare of these buses are going to come out after the trial. One of the trial between Delhi, Jaipur is currently it's going on. And fare of one car, which you can hire instead of a diesel or petrol car, is also going to come out after this trial. So economics of these two is to consumers, and the economics of highways or this ecosystem to the investor is 1 kilometer is costing around 50 lakh rupees. If it is costing 50 lakh rupees, 500 kilometer Delhi, Jaipur and Delhi, Agra, somewhere it will cost around 220 crore rupees. So in 220 crore rupees, if you are going to convert a lot of traffic in between these cities on electric cars and electric buses, it's not a bad idea. We might have spent 100 crores of rupees or, into conventional system of subsidy and many other things, which did not work much to the ecosystem. So my take on making it more convincing is to make it people's business. It should not be government business. Government has no business to be in the business. I think our leadership keeps on saying this. So from this perspective, if tomorrow we need a transition to be completed within timeline, it will only be possible if people will start participating that the way people started participating into the digital transmission. We have more than 800 million mobile phones in India.
And
But
Abhijit,
I
can you
have
tell a
not
little
seen
bit about the safety aspect, like you were telling me right now?
safety aspects are a matter of concern because we are yet to use the technology which we should be using. Technology is there, their implementation is missing, and without implementation and without proper safety, if we expect EVs to be safe, it is a high expectation from a growing and budding emerging tech. There would be fire incidences, there would be difficulties, and there would be battery failures. We cannot disassociate the industry from it. But what we can do is to identify these volatile batteries or faulty, equipments and EVs quickly, and as soon as possible, we can remove them from the public uses so that people do not get injured, people do not die. We just identify that this particular patch of battery is troubling. There might be 100 vehicles already sold. So those 100 can be recalled, but this recalling should happen before fire incident, before death, not after the death.
And
or after
government
any
coming out with
unfortunate
any
incident.
regulations regarding the fire EV fire safety, etc.?
Recently, I think Satvik will be able to respond more to it. That recently, the new recommendation for the higher safety standards has came up. Yesterday, some more incident has happened, very unfortunate. There might be some more strict action is foreseen in this sector. But I see regulations will not be able to alone cure fire. Fire is something which industry need to participate and make sure that whatever technology, maybe a black box feature and maybe an online tracking of batteries where their heat spectrum can be tracked through AI/ML servers. These are the things which industry will have to do. The cost of doing such kind of monitoring is not very high. Having an eSIM inside a battery is only costing 900, 1200 rupees per year. And these, they already accumulate the data and they upload it on the cloud server, it can be analyzed. So cost is not high, but when people lose their lives, industry also loses confidence. Users, they lose confidence on electric mobility. These are the very negative trends which are caused because of these small mistakes. The entire industry comes under the questioning and under debate and doubt that it may not be safe because of couple of vehicle couple of faulty batteries.
So I have a quick question from both. So as a end user, is it safe to buy an EV at the current stage, or should I wait for a couple of years before the technology matures? Very quick question. I understand Abhijit has to go, so very quick question. Yes, Abhijit, can you?
Saurabh, very good question. Am I audible?
Yes, we can hear you.
A very good question. The question is answered, and it can only be answered with the transparency. When user is buying something, he deserves to know what he or she is buying, what kind of insurance that battery has, what kind of third party damage or any injury damage he's going to get from the insurance company, what kind of certification that battery and testing that battery has gone through, and how safe it is. I'm also director for ease of doing business. So my concern is to make the transformation of information process is in a way that the way you want to drink some, certain type of cold drink, certain type of food material, you can see the label that how much it is having protein and how much carbohydrate, and it is safe, it is veg, it is non-veg. These kind of transparency need to be there on the level of the battery, on the level of the vehicle. The consumer deserves to know that something goes wrong tomorrow, whether this is insured or not. I cannot commit that entire industry will overnight jump the industry standards and they will become the compliant. But user should have the choice to choose a safe one and to choose an unsafe one. People who are running EVs or retrofit vehicle or any type of vehicle which are not safe, it is their own choice. But transparency should not be costly.
I think it's a good way forward. Satvik, just a quick question. I have another question for Abhijit before he leaves. So, can you just quickly answer this?
Yeah, safety is utmost priority. Okay, and in the past few months, the incident that we have seen, right, like EVs catching fire, there have been multiple reasons out of that. Somebody says, the BMS has been not efficient enough, and BMS is, it monitors the health of the battery, right? That's one part of it. Second, somebody says, the poor cell quality, right? It leads to electric vehicles getting fire, blah blah blah. So the point I'm trying to make here is this is a very nascent industry, and ARAI is a regulatory body for this particular industry. They're doing a great job, but the pace at which the innovation industry is moving, the regulatory bodies also have to catch up with that. They're doing an amazing job. Trust me, I've spoken to the manager at the ARAI. They're doing an amazing job. So in terms of is it safe or not safe, I would say it is safe. It is safe. There are a few incidents that is happening, like with any technology, with any machine, there are going to be faulty units. Unfortunately, the casualty, death is a casualty here when the incident is too high, right? Death is a casualty. But if you look at the ratio, it is not like very high, right? So I would say there is confidence. Some of the startups like Ola, Ather, amazing job. There are no compromise on safety over there.
So basically, what you are saying is that there is more, like you can say, a hysteria around this. Like maybe there is one incident in Karnataka in 1 month, and obviously it will get a lot of publicity, and something like that is happening. And on ground, obviously, it is not like every lane has some accident or something. It's more like a one state having one accident in 1 month, something like that is happening.
Because I know a lot of startups like Ultraviolet and Ather, they're doing amazing job. There's no compromise for safety over there because we're in the same ecosystem, right? So we talk to the founders. So it's an amazing thing. So I would say don't fear. Go ahead and be the first mover to adopt an EV. Yeah.
Okay. So I have another question for Abhijit. So Abhijit, the Indian government is doing a lot of things around logistics in and around Delhi. So anything around logistics hub? So Delhi NCR has been converted into a logistics hub, and a lot of things are happening. So anything around that which has synergy with the EV ecosystem, as well as because we are moving towards EV, and logistics is obviously dependent on transportation. So how EV space is merging into this logistical thing which government is bringing?
I think around Delhi, many of you who know the AQI and the quality index of air in Delhi, and it is very alarming. It is very difficult to say that what kind of solution we should implement and in what timeline we should implement. Sometimes we do too little and sometimes we do too late. So before it becomes too little and too late, we need to get up and look at Delhi's culture, where a component of pollution, which is not only contributed from the vehicle which are Delhi's vehicle, but also from the vehicle which are coming from outside Delhi for delivery of goods or the cargo trucks, which usually enter at the night. And when they are entering in the city, it is very difficult to check each of them on the emission parameters, because most of them, they are cargo, so they are plying on the highways. It is very difficult to do an on-site testing of all of them. So how do we look at it from the percentage point of view? Around 28 to 32% is the carbon emission which is caused inside the Delhi air from the vehicle which is not from Delhi, which is from outside. So after 10 p.m., if you will be on the Delhi roads, you will see a lot of trucks who have entered because they have been waiting for the no entry. And morning before 7:30, they have to go out. So at night they come to do deliveries inside the city, and they do a lot of emission, a lot of black smoke emission. So that can be stopped if logistics hubs can be created on the entry points of Delhi. That is one of the pilots which we are doing with IIT Delhi and Delhi cluster of principal scientific advisor to Government of India, where these trucks will be stopped on the beginning in the entry point of the city, and the load which they were carrying would be unloaded and would be carried inside the city from electric two-wheeler and electric three-wheeler. These electric two-wheeler and three-wheeler will run on the swapping, and there a lot of companies from ACC companies would be able to deploy their ACC batteries, the new age batteries which government is making to decrease the dependency of lithium ion from China. And these swapping modules will also be tested for 6 months, 8 months in the on-site testing, not from the lab testing, so that by the time people or public start using it, their credibility and their safety is unmatched. It is proven. So that's an ambitious pilot which NHEV and CPUs has signed up with DRIV, Delhi cluster of principal scientific advisor to government.
And is it limited to Delhi NCR, or is it being implemented in other metropolitan areas also?
I am sorry, I lost you. Can you repeat your question?
I am asking, is this initiative limited to Delhi NCR, or are these kind of initiatives been initiated in other metropolitan areas like Mumbai, Bangalore, etc.?
Not yet. Delhi is the first one to do it.
Okay. So,
thank you so much, Saurabh.
Okay.
I will really have to leave. I hate doing it, but I understand that the matter is very grievous.
So, thanks, Abhijit, for giving your time. So we have Satvik. I will be asking a few questions from Satvik, but now we can open up for questions from the audience. So if you are, if you want to ask questions, you can put your questions in the chat window, and I can read them out. So we can take one question. Professor Gautam Datta is asking, where are the batteries coming from? So Satvik, as you know, the ecosystem. So I have a little bit of knowledge about the ecosystem. I presume most of the batteries are somehow coming from China only, but you can tell in more detail, like how many are assembled in India, and like, are there any other countries also from where these batteries are coming?
Right. So yes, batteries are mostly imported. I hope people know that 40 to 50% of the vehicle cost is battery cost, right? So there is a huge thrust from the government to localize battery manufacturing. Okay. Now, battery is just not the hardware. Then you have the BMS. So we are very good in the software part of it. Okay.
Can you tell a little bit about BMS? I understand that it's a technical word, battery management system, but I think many people may not be knowing technical things about it.
Sure. So BMS stands for Battery Management System. So what happens here is, so it's an IoT enabled device. So what happens here is you can control the performance of a battery through a BMS, right? For example, let's say the temperature increases in the battery. The code in the BMS has the ability to cut off so that the battery doesn't overheat and then burst. This is just one example I gave you. There are basically controls the functioning of a battery. So battery without the BMS is just a hardware, a power source, right? The moment you put a BMS software into it, it controls. Okay. So similarly for a charger, EV charger, you have a CMS, a charge management system, right? Again, it controls. So now lithium-ion batteries are mostly imported, right, from Taiwan, China, and in the East Asian countries. Because I think due to geography and minerals that's available there in the continent, they can easily manufacture batteries. But going forward, right, I was listening to the other experts the other day. Locally, if you want to make EV the main vehicle source in India, we need to localize battery. There's no, because or else EVs will continue to be expensive for us. The moment we start importing, right, it will become expensive. So we will have to localize it. And yes, to answer in short, it is coming from the East Asian countries.
Okay. Another, I would like to ask one question that Satvik, what are the issues in charging vehicles at homes and apartments? Because I like you told that it is not the same user experience as in petrol pump where you just go and in 2 minutes it is charged.
Right.
So there are two things. So some people are asking about the battery swapping. So ministers have talked about battery swapping from time to time.
Yeah.
So I am also not very clear what is battery swapping, because like, is it like you take your own battery and you just go to the charging infrastructure and they give you a new battery? So isn't like how will you make it safer? Because obviously I may be giving a good quality battery, they may be giving me a bad quality battery back.
Right.
So one thing is swapping, other thing is like the best case scenario is that if you are living in an apartment and the apartment has chargers, you can just charge it like a phone at night.
Right.
So like we charge phones at night, we can charge EVs at night, and a whole day in the city, there will obviously be no problem.
Correct.
Because we travel for just 20-30 kilometers maximum in the city generally.
Right.
And if you have an independent house, then obviously it becomes a little more easier also. So if you can tell me answer to these three questions. One is battery swapping, second is charging in apartments, and third is charging in independent houses.
Sure. So let me take about the question of charging at home, because as I told you, electricity is democratized. Everybody wants to charge at home. Now, what happens is in an apartment, right? Apartments where we all are staying right now, they were never designed to hold EV vehicles there, right? So what happens, I'll tell you, let's say an apartment has 100 houses, 100 units, right? Each unit has a sanctioned load from a local discom. If you have a 2 BHK, maybe 3 kilowatt is your sanctioned load, or maybe 5 kilowatt is a sanctioned load. But there is a fixed sanctioned load. Therefore, if you have, let's say, 5 ACs in your house or 5 refrigerators, it is just not viable. You're going way beyond the sanctioned load, and therefore you see a tripping happening there. So in an apartment, right, you have a meter. Every house has a meter in an apartment. Every unit has a meter. Now, first of all, how will you connect? How will you bring a plug socket from your meter to your car park? Most of the car parks don't have a plug socket. Even if they do have, it'll be connected to a common meter, a common area meter. But the bill has to come to your apartment, right? Like to your house, right? So the first challenge is how will you bring a power source from your meter to the car park, number one. If you're able to do that, now just imagine a Nexon, a 30 kilowatt hour battery pack. If you connect a 30 kilowatt of battery pack to your meter, you were never sanctioned to use a 30 kilowatt load. You are only sanctioned for your domestic purpose of 3 kilowatt, which means, number one, you need to go to the BESCOM or DISCOM and get an extension of the load. Again, a lot of bureaucracy and time consuming. But imagine 100 houses in the apartment, right? If all 100 of them have an EV and they want to charge, do you think apartments' electricity infrastructure was designed to handle such a massive surge of load? No. The substations and the transformers you have in your apartments, right? They have a buffer load of 50 kilowatt, 100 kilowatt. But can you imagine like 50 EVs, the 30 kilowatt hour battery charging simultaneously overnight, it'll just shoot up. So there are infrastructural issues. It is not so easy as saying right now what's happening, right? I myself in my previous startup, I have gone and installed chargers in apartments. Right now, every apartment, let's say a 500 flat apartment, only 4 or 5 vehicles are there. Tomorrow, this number will increase. That's when the challenge comes. So I've spoken to a lot of association members, RWA association members. It's a challenge that they're facing right now. They want to upgrade their infrastructure. Now, to independent houses, again, the same issue. You have a sanctioned load of 3 or 5 kilowatt. The moment you plug in your car, you'll be shooting way above your sanctioned load, which means you need to take permission from your local discoms. Number one. Number two, right now, they're not so strict because it's not creating a heavy load on the grid. Tomorrow, if a lot of vehicles start charging in the sanctioned load limit, it's just going to shoot up. The load of the grid will just shoot up. So there are challenges. I would say, number one, talk to the local discoms to take permission whether you can extend your load. Number one. Number two, fortunately, your apartments or your houses, right, it is slow charging. It is not fast charging. It's a level 1 charging, which is 3.3 kilowatt. So which means a Nexon will take 8 to 11 hours to charge, which is pretty good. Yeah, so there are infrastructural issues for people who want to charge at home. You really have to go and extend your load capacity of the sanctioned load. Okay.
Okay, and this is valid for independent homes as well as apartments.
As well, or else, yeah, as well, yes.
And what do you have to say about the battery swapping? Because many people are asking, like, what is battery swapping? How feasible is it? Because interestingly, most of the talk by ministers have been about battery swapping.
Right.
So what is it?
So what is battery swapping is now, battery swapping is nothing but there are battery swapping stations available. They're grooves, okay? So you remove the battery from the battery swapping station, okay, and put it into your vehicle groove. So for example, two-wheeler, let's say you have a two-wheeler, okay? For example, Bounce is a classic example of battery swapping two-wheeler vehicles. So behind the seat, you have a groove. You remove the battery from the groove, put it into the charging station or the battery swapping station, remove a new battery and put it back into the thing, which means it is same like a petrol bunk experience. In 2 minutes, you're off to go. Now, the challenge with this is battery swapping is not feasible for all type of vehicles. Two-wheeler, three-wheeler, it is feasible, okay? Because it is extremely heavy. Number one, a 30 kilowatt hour car battery, it is not feasible to lift from a hand. It is like, it weighs, for example, 1 kilowatt hour battery weighs 15 kilograms. Imagine a 30 kilowatt hour battery, how much does it weigh? It'll be in hundreds, right? And hundreds of kgs. So for a four-wheeler and a six-wheeler like buses, it is not feasible, okay, number one. Number two, battery swapping, wherever time is a constraint. For example, logistics vehicles, two-wheeler delivery vehicles, they can't afford to have downtime. The moment they have downtime means they are earning less. For them, it makes sense. For someone like a four-wheeler, a passenger vehicle, I'm okay because I drive only 50 kilometers per day. I come back home, I charge overnight. So I don't need to have a battery swapping mechanism. Now, third biggest problem in battery swapping is you need to have standardization. You cannot use an Ather battery to a Ola battery. You can't do that because every OEM, right, they have their own design mechanism. So there is a standardization problem with vehicle manufacturers. For example, Tata's battery will not fit into a Hyundai Kona.
So is there any standard set right now, or like everybody is taking their own approach?
So it is very hard to push standardization because it's same like engines, right? Like every car wants to have a different. It wants to stand out from its competitors. So government cannot enforce a standardization. Government can enforce standardization.
But there is no industry effort to standardize. Like I can give you one example. I can add, I think many people would be entrepreneurs in the EV ecosystem, and I can give some suggestions. So I started mobile app development in 2002. So it was like at that time, even camera phone was something which was not available. So I saw the mobile ecosystem from day one, the apps ecosystem, the smartphone revolution. So I can give some of the suggestions from like my learnings. I think some of the learnings are applicable here also. So from 2002 till 2008, around the time when iPhone was launched and people started understanding that some proper, yeah, OS has been launched. Till that time, there were a lot of there was a lot of innovation. Many companies were starting their own operating systems. Many companies were starting their own mobile phones. There were competing standards, and at that time, it was as a mobile app developer, it was very difficult. Like people, the Airtels of the world used to ask, "Are you supporting this phone also, that phone also, that phone also?" And we had just two phones with one OS and five phones with another OS, something like that. I think something similar what you are saying is happening in the charging ecosystem, where maybe Ola maybe have a different battery and Ather may be having a different battery, and Tata Nexon, like you say, that you cannot lift the battery, so obviously battery swapping is not possible. I think something similar will be happening with the charging infrastructure also, because I think there is no one standard network where I say that I have this pass and I can just go and charge it anywhere across the country. I think is that also there, Satvik, where we have competing charging stations having different like when we charge mobile phone in America, we have to use different plug, and when we charge mobile phone in India, we have to use different plug. Something similar is also happening on ground with the EV charging stations also.
Correct. In terms of charging station, right, standardization has come. So same like mobile phone, you had like iPhone cable, a Samsung cable, right? Like C type, B type. Right now, there are 2 to 3 broad standardization. It is based on the connector type, what goes into your vehicle, right? That pin or the connector has become standardized now. So for example, CCS standard, right? Combined charging system, it's the European standard, okay? And now you have a CADEMO standard, it's from Japanese standard. India has its own standard called GB by T, Bharat standards. So what happens broadly, most of the vehicles that are on road now, they belong to any of these 3 standards now, broadly. Okay, tomorrow India, in terms of charging standards, it has already come. Tomorrow it will be broadly, it will be CCS, right, in India as well. So charging is not a problem. So when you enter a charging station, you will not face much issues. But in battery swapping, that is completely dependent on the OEM's engineering team, right? Every OEM has different architecture, engineering architecture. So that it's hard to bring a battery standardization is going to be hard, but charging is already in the process. It's already there on ground now. It's a good sign. So yeah.
Okay. So basically, the charging infrastructure is going in one direction, and the battery thing is more heterogeneous as of now.
Correct.
But I feel that is changing. Like there was a news recently that Maruti Suzuki is starting a factory which PM had inaugurated recently.
Correct.
It was a battery facility.
Yes.
So do you think these OEMs, etc., like a general question? So these OEMs, etc., in future will be using their own batteries, or will they be buying from some vendors?
Right.
Like internal combustion engine, I believe is being used in a more standardized way,
right,
as of now.
Right. What I feel, see, right now they're buying from a battery manufacturer. Right now, what I feel is, end of the battery being a key component of a of an electric vehicle, right? I feel going forward, some of the OEMs will start manufacturing batteries in-house. They do not want to let go of a key component to a third-party supplier. What if the third-party supplier is not on board with us? If they start acting in a wrong manner. So I feel battery is a very key component, and I feel going forward, many of the OEMs, a classic example being Maruti now, they're going to have their own battery vertical in here in India. So I think it's a good sign that we control the key component. Non-core component can be outsourced to a third-party supplier, because I don't want supply chain disruptions, causing problem to my vehicle delivery. So going forward, I have a good sign or a gut feeling that many big OEMs will start controlling battery manufacturing as well. Just like Tesla did in US, they control the battery in-house completely, right? So, and Maruti in India, they will do that. They will start controlling the battery manufacturing and supply chain in-house.
So there are two questions relating to research on charging. So I understand that you are more from commercial side, Satvik, but can you give a little bit of you are knowing a lot about the ecosystem. So are there any research initiatives happening in India to create better charging infrastructure or maybe better charging technologies, and maybe even we hear it often that lithium is not available that much in India, and right now lithium is a big issue. So maybe something which can replace the lithium ion battery. Do you know about any such researches?
Right. I'll try my best because I'm not a subject matter expert in these. I'll try my best. See, some of the premier institutes, right, automobile institutes, are working on building fast charging. Okay. Now, see, I want to educate the audience a little bit. If you have an extremely fast charging station and you connect a two-wheeler battery to it, it doesn't mean that zoop in 1 second it'll charge. There has to be a chemistry between the battery and the charging station. So, for example, a 30 kilowatt hour battery, right, and you connect it to a 50 kilowatt charger. So what happens per hour? It basically means per hour 50 kilowatt of power can be given to the battery, but it doesn't mean the battery will absorb 50 kilowatt hour, right? Because the battery capacity is only 30 kilowatt hour battery capacity. So what I'm trying to say here is, no matter how much fast charging station you create or you develop, end of the day, the battery should be capable of absorbing that energy. Okay. Now R&D is happening in the charging field, but more R&D is required in the battery field, which is also happening in India. I'm not exactly sure what is the status of it because I've not been personally involved in that, because I'm purely in the commercial, as Saurabh said, I've been involved in the commercial side, like in the business side of it. So I'm not completely sure about what is happening on the R&D side of the charging infrastructure.
So I think the takeaway from Abhijit and Satvik has been that obviously EV has become main thing, and nowadays the government is focusing on it a lot. And like Abhijit was telling, that the initiative in Delhi where logistics are being planned in a way that EV will become a mainstay of that. And obviously Delhi being a very polluted city, I think it will help a lot to reduce pollution. So I personally have got this sense after talking to Abhijit and Satvik that EVs are here to stay, as we all know. And I think it will take a little time because there are still some issues relating to battery swapping infrastructure. There are issues relating to regulations and safety. There are issues relating to standardization of industry. Industry standards are missing as of now for batteries, as well as a little bit about charging also. I think payment infrastructure has to be also there, like what Satvik was telling, that if you are in a housing society and if there are 500 cars standing, but you will not have 500 different connection points. So people will be using same connection points, and then how you will bill, all those kind of, I think, nitty-gritties are there. Which reminds me, as I was telling, which reminds me of the mobile ecosystem in 2003, 2004, where like I still remember I created one mobile app in 2004, and I gave that to some senior industry person, and he said, "Puri app dikhao mere ko. I just don't want to see a demo," because he was very curious how mobile apps work. So I think we are still at that stage where people are experimenting, innovating, and I think the actual scaling up will start happening when we will have that Android and iPhone moment. So I think when iPhone moment happened in mobile phones, there was first signs of standardization, then Android came, and then suddenly we had a duopoly. I think my own personal take is that it will take a little time for these standards to emerge from the industry. And once these emerge, then you will be very clear that, oh, I have to buy this Android or iPhone kind of, you will have a choice. Right now, I think it's more a heterogeneous ecosystem, and it becomes a little difficult for the end user to buy an EV, and coupled with some safety things. But like Satvik was saying, that safety bit is more exaggerated. If you have a quality battery, like Abhijit was saying, government is trying to give quality parameters where the battery manufacturer will say that this is the quality of my battery, and then we can choose whether we want a sasti tikau battery, or we want a more expensive but a better battery which has 99.9%, which is 99.9% safe, something like that. I think we are moving in the right direction. India needs it. The best takeaway which I have got from studying the EV infrastructure over the last few years is that See, India used to be a net importer of petrol or diesel and all the petroleum products, but now we have ample sunshine. And the good thing is that after solar cells, after wind power, we have ample non-renewable energy resources in our country. And I think in future, the best thing will happen is that our balance of payments situation will improve. And the day we have solar cells in every home, every apartment complex, and somehow if we are using those for charging, I think a lot of good things will happen. Yes, Satvik.
Saurabh, there's a question from Professor Gautam. Is there a startup which is working on solar to direct electric charging, right? I just wanted to highlight on that. I met a startup recently. They're doing an amazing job. What they're doing is they're converting street lights, in the city. They put a solar panel on top of the street light. The solar panel can power the street light, number one. At the bottom, they also have a charging plug. So, right, so it's a street light plus a charging pole. And there's not, and already it's part of the electric infrastructure. So it's a great innovation there. In fact, Kerala, I've seen a startup in Kerala called Charge Mode or somebody who's doing this. In Bangalore, they're doing. So yes, it is possible, and they're already doing it.
And I would like to add that there are a lot of startups doing EV related things. So I am on the board of a few incubators, as well as I am I travel a lot to various incubators. So from, you can say, Kashmir to Kanyakumari, I have seen a lot of EV companies, a lot of EV startups doing. So recently I went to IIT Delhi, where a startup is there which is converting the existing cars into EVs. So you can buy any car and you can convert that to a EV.
Absolutely.
So those kind of things are also happening. So I think it's a bright future ahead for EVs. And I personally feel, as we all know, Mr. Adani, Mr. Ambani is also spending a large amount of money towards the green energy and electric vehicles. I feel the future is very rosy. But if you are a startup, do tread with caution, because like what I'm sharing, from 2002 to 2008, there were no direct standards in mobile computing. Similar thing is happening here also. So it will take a couple of years, I think, for the standards to emerge out, and till that time, it's very risky as a investment proposition, because you want to be at the right side of the things. You don't want to be on the wrong side of the thing. So with that, I would like to thank Satvik. Abhijit has already left, but I would like to thank him. I would like to thank the audience, and thanks All India Management Association for providing us a platform to discuss this. You can also follow me. I am sharing my contact details on social media here. And it was nice having Satvik, having you here. So thanks.
Right. Thank you, Saurabh. And thanks All India Management Association for the great opportunity. Hope we could help, some people educate about EVs. Yeah. Thanks so much.